Shabbat Shalom. Happy Sabbath. This morning we will look at the subject, the return of Melek Yeshua. Melek simply means king. So we want to look at the return of King Yeshua. And we all have some knowledge of Yeshua's coming and the circumstances that will surround his coming. So the subject this morning is in some regard epistemic, in that we have a knowledge of who the Messiah is and is coming back. But what we really want to do in a clinical way is to look at one aspect of his coming and study that in relation to the circumstances that we are now seeing. So in that regard, it will become epistemological. So the knowledge is epistemic, and the study we are going to be doing this morning is epistemological. We are going to look at the issue of the 7-year Sabbath, which we call the Shemitah Year. The Shemitah Year that many people have misunderstood or have not perhaps heard. Now, as I look at this, the thing that comes to mind is what NASA is currently doing. As you know, last week, NASA was supposed to launch a rocket to the moon, and because of bad weather, it was not able to do so. So, as I understand, it's going to take place sometime today, this afternoon. Now, what caught my attention was the name of the rocket, Artemis. Perhaps that meant nothing to you, but Artemis, as you know, if you've studied Greek mythology, is the twin sister of Apollo. And you will recall it was Apollo 11 that went to the moon some years ago. At least it was said that they went to the moon. Now, this is 50 years ago, which means 50 years in Hebrew context is what? A jubilee. So it is their jubilee, and we want to look at that from a biblical perspective this morning. The year of what? Shemitah, the Shemitah year. Now, many of us understand the 7-day Sabbath, that it's a cycle and it comes around every week about this time. After the 6 working days have elapsed, then come the 7th day, which we put aside our concerns of the world, and then we focus up on the Creator himself. Now, the Creator, as you know, in Genesis, he created the heavens and the earth and the sea and all there is, along with time. So we live in a 4-dimensional world, if you like. And so there are certain things that we cannot see, because the other 6 dimensions in the 10-dimensional universe are spiritual. And so we can only reach those other parts by faith. And that's why Paul tells us that you fight not against flesh and blood, but you fight against principalities, and they are in high places. And therefore you have to, ask Michael to fight for you. So this morning we want to look at the coming of Yeshua, but we want to look at it through the prism of the Shemitah year. As I indicated, that many of us understand the a seventh-day Sabbath, but very few of us have ever stopped to think of the land Sabbath, which is the 7-year Sabbath, which we're coming up to. And it's important for you to know, because coming up in September is the start of a new cycle of 7 years. And as we read this morning, we are told that we must allow the land to rest. And people have forgotten that, and they think that's done away with in Moses' time. But may I remind you that in 2001, we saw the shaking in America, because Shemitah Year means shaking, and Yah said everything that can be shaken will be shaken. And 9/11 was such a shaking that the towers fell down. We also saw that the economy had crashed. And in 2008, the same thing happened, where the Dow Jones closed at 777. I mean, you can see that even when men are not concerned about Yah, Yah is going to bring about what he says in the Shemitah Year. And we saw in 2015 also that there was a crash of the economy. And so it would not surprise me greatly if sometime within the next few weeks, this economy crashes, because we are now in the month of Elul, moving towards Tishrei, and we are in the Shemitah Year. And Yah says that this is a time when the people should make sure that the land rests. It's the year of rest. And then Yah does not stop with his cycle there. He says, then you count 7 times 7. That's 49. And in the 50th year of your counting, that is the Jubilee. And many scholars and theologians now conclude that Yeshua will come back in the year of the Jubilee. And the other thing I think it's worth noting is that the tribulation time will start in the Shemitah Year, because Yah does his business all by Shemitah calendar. And if you are one who function by way of the Gregorian calendar, all these things will not mean anything to you, because way back in Genesis 1 and verse 14, Yah makes it clear that I'm going to communicate to you by way of the moon and the stars and the sun. And so when we have a sun eclipse, then Yah is speaking to the nations of the world. And when we have an eclipse of the moon, he's speaking to Israel herself. And when I say Israel, I'm not talking about geographic Israel. I'm talking about the believers who have accepted Yeshua. So we need to understand that idiom, that way of talking. Are you with me? So let's look at our subject, the Messiah coming back. The disciples were as eager as we are today to know the signs of the times. What will they be? What will they be? And when I see Artemis, the twin sister of Apollo, and it's the 50th year, the Jubilee for them, and I also know that Artemis is the same name or the same god that the Romans worship, that they call Diana, that we can read about in Acts chapter 19. So for the Greek, it's Artemis. For the Romans, it's Diana. And Zeus is for, because Zeus is the father of them both. And Zeus is the Greek and Jupiter for the Romans, same thing. So when you hear Jupiter or Zeus, it's the same thing. And what's interesting also, by way of the medics and the scientists that we have, particularly the doctors today, when they're trained, they take an Hippocratic oath and they give their allegiance to Apollo. And so I just want you to see that these things are happening in your very eyes, but you perhaps have not taken notice. And obviously, you know, the word is that Poseidon and Hades are the sons of who? Who is their father? Cronus. Are you with me? And we get the term corona. So I just want you, we have to read between the lines. So the disciples wanted to know. They wanted to know what will be the signs of the times. And Yeshua responded to them by saying, no man knoweth the day nor the hour, not even the angels. They don't know. And so today, preachers and teachers and theologians and others, they go around and they say, no man knoweth the day nor the hour. And perhaps if they had understood the idiom or the phrase, the way of speaking, a method of speech, they would have surely they would have understood what Yeshua was saying. The people that he spoke to, they understood. And so I want to illustrate this point by way of going back to our own roots. And perhaps that will give you the perspicuity, the clarity that you need to understand what we're saying today. Take, for example, if you grew up in the islands as I did, and you were talking to your kinfolks, perhaps in rural St. Mary or Portland, in that area that I know, and you spoke to them and you asked them for something, and they said to you, "Inademaros." I mean, immediately you would understand what the person is indeed saying. They're saying tomorrow. Are you with me? And, you know, if you're talking to somebody and you kind of shock them and they blurted out blouse and skirt, you knew that this is a wow moment. You would know that. Or, you know, if somebody says to you, everything is irie, you know what they're saying is everything is copacetic. It's going okay. It's doing well. And so the point I'm making, when you understand the local idiom, a figure of speech, you will know exactly what Yeshua is saying. When are you coming back? What will be the signs of the time? So when he said that no man knoweth the day or the hour, he was really telling them exactly when he's coming back. But in the Western thinking, in the Western mind, in the Western schools of theology, they are telling you nobody knows. Did Noah know when the flood would come? Of course, Noah knew that the people were giving 120 years probation. And Yeshua said, just like it was in the time of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of Yeshua. Noah knew. You're building this ark now, and I'm going to give them grace for 120 years. And if they repent, things might change, but they never change. And so we need to look at what Messiah is saying. And to be like Messiah is to think like him and to speak like him. That's why when he spoke to the disciples, often he would speak in parable. He said, I'm speaking to you in parable for you to know, but it's not for the others to know. That's why I speak in parable. So he's speaking to us today in the idiom of no man knoweth the day nor the hour. What was the Messiah saying? Well, back then, and even now, each month of the Hebrew year would commence by the moon. Now, and it should give you thoughts to consider, because most of us function on the Gregorian calendar, and the Gregorian will tell you that, 30 days at September, April, June, and November, and all the rest have 31 except February, who has been given, short change. He only has 28 days and so on and so forth. But we want to be clear that we are dealing with the calendar that Yah gives us. We're talking about 29 days and 12 hours and 48 minutes and 2.8 seconds. That's the kind of biblical calendar that we are dealing with. And so when Yeshua said, no man know it, he is really saying, no man know it when the new moon is coming. He was talking about the new moon of the 7th month of Tishri, which is a Sabbath, and that's going to be on the 26th of this month. And so it's a Sabbath. I think it's, if I'm correct, it's on a Monday. And therefore, it's a Sabbath when we will meet. He's telling them that no man know when the moon comes up, because the moon at its conjunction, it usually starts dark. So the new moon is usually a new moon. And by the next day, you see a slither of that moon coming out. And therefore, back in the Sanhedrin days of Yeshua's time, there would be two witnesses who would stay on the mountaintop, and they will look at the moon to see when it's coming out, and they would be so studious in doing so. And as soon as they saw the slither of the moon, the new moon, they would run to the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin would inform the people, and they would light fires to send the message to the diaspora to let the people know that the new moon has started. And that's what Yeshua was saying about the 7th month. He says, no man knows. So he's letting you know that the Feast of Trumpets, hear me, he wants you to know that he's coming back on the Feast of Trumpets. So come with me to the book of First Thessalonians, and we're going to look at chapter 4, the fourth portion of it. And we will start at verse 16 and read up to 17. And this is a passage that many theologians and believers have read over the years. And in fact, everybody is waiting for this event. It is the greatest event of all times that people are waiting for. And some have even taught themselves and believe that at this particular time, they are going to heaven, despite of what John 3:13 said, no one will go to heaven except those who come, that one who comes down from heaven. But that's not the point I want to make. The point is this. For Yeshua himself shall descend from heaven, he's coming down, with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of Yah, and the dead in Yeshua shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet Yahweh, Yeshua, in the air, and so shall we ever be with Yeshua. Are you with me? Almost everywhere, Christians, if you call them that, it's a nickname, let's say believers, are waiting for the day of this event. Are you with me? Two things they don't know about the day. And that's why we are studying this thing today, this subject today. Two things they don't know. They don't know that this event takes place on the first of Tishri. That's the new moon. And nobody knows when the moon is coming. We are better off to understand it now by way of the scientific experiments that people have done, and they know when the conjunction will take place. We know that. The other thing that they don't seem to realize that on the day of trumpet back then, and even now, 100 trumpets would sound. There would be a blowing of the shofar, the ram's horn, 100 times. And the last trumpet sound is what the 100th trumpet sound is what the scripture, the Bible is saying is the last trump. When the last trump sound, the 100th trumpet sound, then Yeshua will appear. And then the dead in Christ will rise, the dead in Messiah will rise, the dead in Yeshua will raise up, and those who are us who did not die, because there will be people living at the time, will be caught up to meet him. But Zekaryah tells you that this is not going to heaven. He's taking you to the land of Israel. And we will get there, because we need to understand that this is serious. It is serious. It is very, very serious. And First Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 52 says, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Are you with me? Now, another of the signs that we saw, and you saw, but perhaps did not take notice of, is that even the previous president of the United States was named Trump. Remember, all the prophecies in the Bible, they usually play out, even as the time of Daniel, in politics and economics. Always do. That's how they play out. And so when you saw Trump, you knew time was drawing near. And what made it significant for me that Mr. Trump at the time was 70 years old and 7 months and 7 days at his inauguration. And his first speech lasted 77 minutes. So you could see Yah was bringing all the sevens together to close out a whole system to bring in the new. And so Yahweh wants you to know that these feast days have not been abandoned. They're not done away with, despite of what your bishop or your pastor has said. Because if you are, this is the crucial thing for me. As I indicated earlier, all of Christendom are waiting for this event here referenced in 1 Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17. Everybody is waiting for it. But guess what? This day can fall, let me say, the new moon can come on any day. Rosh Hashanah can come on any day. It can come on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So when Yeshua said, no man knoweth, he's saying you don't know when the new moon will come, whether it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or any day of the week. But what makes it significant also is that whenever it comes, whenever the new moon is, it's going to be a Sabbath. So if the new moon comes on a Tuesday, those who are on the Gregorian calendar, they won't recognize it. Only those who had kept their eyes up on the Messiah will recognize that even though it is a Tuesday in the week, it is still a Sabbath in heaven's calendar. And therefore, many of the people, when Yeshua comes, will be at work, at play, at college, doing their own thing. They will miss him. And the word says, when he comes on the earth, will he find faith? Are you following me? This is how crucial the whole thing is. That everybody almost, the whole host of Christendom, if it falls in the week, they will not recognize it. They will not be ready to meet the Messiah. And then you understand what Matthew chapter 25 is saying. They fell asleep. The virgins fell asleep. And when the bridegroom came, they needed waking up. And so this message is really about waking you up. Are you with me? Because we are going into a Shemitah year, and notice something else. The tribulation must start in a Shemitah year. And we are at, when you count from the time of Adam till now, we are near in the 600. The 600 what? Or the 6,000 year, I should say. So we are about to reach that time. Yeshua says, I'm making 6 days. But each of those days that I'm giving you represent 1,000 years on my calendar. 2 Peter 3 and verse 8 says that. Peter says, don't be ignorant of this matter, because 1,000 years is a day, a 24-hour day in your sight. Are you with me? But we don't operate like that ordinarily. We listen to what people who have been to theology schools tell us. But Yah says, no, stay on my calendar. Because I said from sunset to sunset is one day. And they tell us that it's from midnight to midnight. Yah says the moon determines what? The start of the month. And he says, after that, I have 7 years, and that's a Shemitah year. And after that, I have a Jubilee. And at the Jubilee, all prisoners, all slaves, all debts are forgiven. You didn't hear me. And that's why, even in America here, what we're seeing is that the government, because Yah always uses human instrumentalities to do his bidding. So it was only recently you heard reports that the government is forgiving school loans to many people. And we think that it's the government doing it, but Yah is doing this in the Shemitah year, because that's when debts are forgiven. We need to understand that these things are prophetic, and they're only playing out through the political system, as I indicated, as was in the days of Noah and Daniel. So we need to understand that We're not in darkness. So come with me now to First Thessalonians chapter 5. First Thessalonians chapter 5. But of the times and the season. Now, season means appointed times. Yeah, it's not talking about spring, summer, autumn, and winter. He's talking about his feast days time, because that's how we operate. Everything is done in his season, meaning his appointed times. Are you with me? And Solomon made that clear to you, because Solomon said there is a season, there is an appointed time for all things. He said in Ecclesiastes. But you thought, because of your Western thinking, your Western mind, you were thinking he's talking about spring, summer, autumn, and winter. No. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. For yourself know perfectly that the day of Yah so cometh, how? As a thief in the night. You children of light, you who keep the commandment and the feast days and have the testimony of Yeshua, you are light bearers. You know that the day comes as a thief, because nobody knows when the new moon is coming, but you can prepare yourself for it. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction come upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness. Who are not in darkness? The children of light. Ye are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Listen to what Paul is saying. It will overtake those who are on a different path and a different calendar, but you who are in Yeshua's calendar, it will not overtake you. Ye are children of light, and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor darkness, therefore let us not sleep as do others. Let us watch and be sober. Let us not sleep as the bridesmaid in Matthew chapter 25. Are you with me? They're telling you all kind of things. You know, I hear preachers often say, well, Yeshua can come anytime. He cannot come anytime. He cannot. He has to come by his own record that he has established in the word. The other thing is that if the tribulation doesn't start this year, it cannot start until 7 years' time. We need to understand these things, otherwise we speak foolishly. And we set prophetic dates, and when those dates come, nothing happens, because we are setting them based on the Gregorian calendar rather than the biblical calendar. And so we run aground. Are you with me? So it is a serious time that in this month of September, we start the Shemitah Year. And the Shemitah Year is 7, it runs for 7 years. Now, the next one will be 2029. Now, what am I saying? I am saying, and I'm not trying to set dates or anything. That's beyond my pay grade. But I'm simply sharing with you the scriptures. And that it would not surprise me greatly if Yeshua were to make a showing between now and 2029. Because that takes us up to the 6,000 years of mankind being on the earth. That's so close this thing is, but, we're happy, clappy church, and that's okay, but we must preach the word, and we must do it how, Paul said, in season, in the appointed times and beyond. So we need to understand that. And as a consequence, I want you to join me in Leviticus that we had read earlier, chapter 25. Leviticus chapter 25. And Yahweh spoke unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land which I will give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto Yahweh. The land must rest. Let the people know that. Even as the people should know that they should work 6 days, and the seventh day is a cyclical rest. It's the day that Yah rested upon the earth. And so when people say the Sabbath is done away with, how can you do away with the day that Yah rested? It has happened. You can't undo what has been done. It is frozen in time. The only way you can change the Sabbath, as I indicated earlier, is that you have to change time. And no man can change time because time is a product of creation. You can't change it. And so when I hear people saying, well, that is your Sabbath and this is mine, they're just telling you they have Jeroboam's religion. And Yah is letting them know, come out from such places. Come out from such people who think like that because they're not thinking like me, because my way is not like their way. Come now, let's reason together, says Isaiah 1:18. Come, let's reason. And so we have to come to Yah because we don't naturally think like him. And so we want to know how he thinks, and he reveals how he thinks in his word. Tell the people that when they go over to the land must keep a Sabbath. But Israel had become so wealthy and so busy, they had forgotten to keep the land Sabbath. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. This year, I'm not pruning my mango tree. Are you with me? It's serious. That mango tree at the back, I'm not pruning it because it's a Shemitah year, and the word says, don't prune it. I do it every year. And perhaps you're thinking, my brother, you're being pedantic on these things. No, I'm being obedient to you. And so, as you well know, Israel did not keep the land Sabbath. And so you need to join me now in the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 9. Now, I think you know the event that by this time, the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, had been taken by the Assyrians. They had gone because they disobeyed first. They fell into apostasy first, and they were taken by the Assyrians. Judah saw this, the southern tribe, and made no alteration to their conduct in the eyes of Yah. So about 100 years later, Yah invited Nebuchadnezzar to come and take them, because Yah is saying, you will not let the land rest, but I'm going to put you into captivity. And while you're into captivity, the land will rest. So Daniel was one of those people that were taken into captivity. Are you with me? And he's now in Babylon. But Daniel is thinking, because we're Daniel's people, according to Daniel 12. We are Daniel's people, and we ought to be thinking, even as he was thinking then, Daniel was thinking, that hold on. Let me just reflect. And he begins to count. And he said, the 70 year, notice they missed 10 cycles of 7 Shemitah years. That's why they went down and spent 70 years in Babylon. Notice how Yah did it. The Israelite missed 10 cycles of 70 years. They just would not obey Yah. So Yah took them to Babylon and they spent 70 years. Daniel, now being wise, at this time recognized that the 70 years are nearly up. As you and I speak today, and as we read the word, you and I know that the 6,000 years are nearly up. Regardless of what churches are saying, they are nearly up. And all you have to do is to do the math and count the ages of the people born from Adam. You know it. And so listen to Daniel. Daniel chapter 9. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, which was king over the realm of the Chaldeans, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood the books and the number of years. You heard what he's saying? He said, I, Daniel, understood what? The books. Daniel was reading, unlike some of us. He said, I understood the books and the number of the years whereof the word of Yahweh came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem. He was reading Jeremiah chapter 25. That's what he was reading. He said, I read it and I realized that 70 years are nearly complete. And he began praying, as we ought to be praying, and fasting. This is not a time for us to play church and to select ourselves and say we're remnants or we're part of the 144. No. Don't select ourselves. Yah does that through his judgment. He's collecting his saints. He's judging us now. And to see whether or not you are in covenant with him. Now the question is, how can you be in covenant when you are in rebellion? What rebellion means? Simply that you are not Torah observant. You're not keeping the law. You are not keeping the feast day. And you say you keep the Sabbath, as some say, but I say that's not enough. All the children in the wilderness, almost 3 million people, they all kept the Sabbath, but only 2, Joshua and Caleb, reached the promised land. They must have been doing something else wrong. Yah said they did not go in because of unbelief. And that unbelief lingers and continues even in this age. So Daniel, this wise young man who had purposed in his heart, he counted. As we here, we are counting the years from Adam to the 6,000. And so we know that by 2029, we're there. Perhaps some of you will remember in August 2017, there was a great eclipse in America, right across America, and it put a line across America. And another eclipse is scheduled for America in April 2024, isn't it? That's 7 years. That's a Shemitah cycle. Are you with me? And we're saying in a few years' time, we are there. And Yah said, before what I say goes astray, heaven and earth will be taken out of the way, will go astray. My word, according to Isaiah 55 and verse 11, will not come back to me void. It will accomplish that which it sets out to do. Are you with me? And so you better understand what Yah is talking thermodynamics. What do you mean by that? Yes, the first law of thermodynamics says what? Energy and matter cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. It cannot. Are you with me? And that raises a serious question for us, because Job did ask the question, if a man dies, shall he live again? So if matter and energy cannot be created and cannot be destroyed, what happens to the spirit of the man when he dies? That's the question that Job asked. And we come to understand that the spirit goes back to where it came from, and the clay is returned to where it is. And the second law of aerodynamics, thermodynamics, I should say, says, it talks of what we call in engineering entropy, meaning it is the decay. And we know the earth is decaying, isn't it? It's decaying. The earth is like a huge system that was wounded up at creation, and it's winding out now. And I'm saying by 2029, it will have gone its full circle of winding. That's what I'm saying. And so decay has set in to such an extent. All this seafloor spreading and ecosystem and all this, Paul puts it in context for us. The earth is groaning for its redemption because it was cursed in Genesis chapter 3. And it would bring forth thorns and thistles. And so it is running out of time because the 6,000 year is drawn. And Yeshua did say, he will cut the time short for righteousness' sake. So no man knoweth the day nor the hour. But I know we don't have a long time to play with. And perhaps you want to ask the question, well, what shall we do? And like Peter, I would say, repent. Repent. So Daniel is praying. Let's go back to chapter 9 of Daniel. Verse 4, and I prayed unto Yahweh, my Elohim, and made my confession, and said, O Yahweh, the great and awe-inspiring Elohim, keeping the covenant and mercy of them that love him. You didn't hear me. Let me read that again for emphasis. Daniel says, and I prayed unto Yahweh, my Elohim, and made my confession, and said, O Yahweh, the great and awe-inspiring Elohim, keeping the covenant and mercy to them that love him, and to them that, what? Keep his commandment. Did Yeshua not say, if you love me, let that love be demonstrable. Keep my commandments. Simple. Well, what the fourth commandment is, keep my Sabbath. And you say, no, I'm going on Sunday. He's saying, you're demonstrating you really don't love me. You're talky, but you don't walky. Are you with me? If you love me, keep my commandment. So Daniel understood it. And Daniel is saying, you keep the covenant. It is we who break the covenant, not him. My covenant I will not break, says Yah. Verse 5, we have sinned, of course. and have committed iniquity, and have done wickedly, and have rebelled, even by departing from thy precepts and from thy judgment. What have they done? They have departed from the precepts and his judgment. They did not keep the land Sabbath. Hear me? They would have kept the 7-day Sabbath, but they did not keep the land Sabbath, and it offended Yah. So he took them away, and they spent 70 years in captivity. Neither have we hearkened unto thy servants, the prophet. We don't listen to the preachers either. Listen, this is, it really as if it's our time, isn't it? Because we're Daniel's people, and we are the descendants of those who rebelled. Let me read it again. We have sinned and have committed iniquity and have done wickedly and have rebelled, even by departing from the precepts and from the judgment. Neither have we hearkened unto the servants of prophet, which spake in thy name to our kings, our princes, and our fathers, and to all the people of the land. O Yahweh, righteousness, or Zedek, belongeth unto thee, but unto us confusion of face. Confusion is Babylon. Confusion of faces, as at this day to the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and unto all Israel that are near and that are far off, through all the countries whither thou hast driven them, because of their trespass, that they have trespassed against thee. Verse 11, yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing from that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore, the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servants of Elohim, because we have sinned against him. Now, if you read this, you need to understand what Moses is saying here. Moses said the curse is on us. He's referring to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and 30. Remember the curses and the promises in Deuteronomy 28. He's saying because we did, because in Deuteronomy 28, Yah said, if you obey me, you get blessings. If you disobey me, you get cursing. And Yah, being a gentleman, he has to keep his word. And they did not obey, so he cursed them. So Daniel understands this, and he's now saying the curse is on us. And so he's praying to be alleviated from it. He wants to be alleviated from it. And so we too, having recognized this morning that the time is much closer than we think. And perhaps you might be thinking, well, my church doesn't teach this. Or I don't believe it. Now, I'm saying, when you read chapter 17 and verse 11 of Luke, the word clearly says, don't listen to what Melek says. Go and check it out for yourself. Do like the Bereans. Receive the word with readiness of heart, but take it home and do your own research. Check it out to see what Melek is saying as any validation. Because truth has to be logically consistent. It has to be what? It has to be verifiable, empirically adequate. It has to be existentially relevant to the time in which you live. So check it out. The word said, don't believe every spirit, but I think you owe it yourself a duty of care to go and check it out. Your salvation is such that you can't leave it in the hands of careless people. Check it out. And so Daniel is in Babylon. He's in captivity, and he knows why he's in captivity. And even though Daniel is in captivity, Daniel is making sure that he doesn't eat the king's meat. And Daniel is making sure that he doesn't worship like the heathens do. Because the heathens, they say, when you hear the sounds of the cornet, and when you hear the sound of the flute, Daniel, we want you to bow. And we want you to get down and to genuflect and to bow down and work. Daniel says, not me. And he went home and he opened his window and he turned his face to Jerusalem and he prayed. And that's the highest place you and I are likely to get. On our knees to the Creator, beseeching and begging. And as he prayed, what happened? Well, come with me to, let's read verse 16. The word says, and Yahweh, according to all thy righteousness, I beseech thee, let thine anger and thy fury be turned away from thy city, Jerusalem, the holy mountain. Notice something here. Jerusalem is listed, is accorded here as an holy mountain. So when Daniel is praying for the holy mountain, he's not praying for a mountain in Jerusalem. He's praying for a people, a gathering of people that is called the holy mountain. And it's out of this mountain, Daniel is letting you know in chapter 2, verse 44 and 45, that the stone is going to come and crush the kings of this earth in the day of judgment, which is what? The first day of Tishri, the Feast of Trumpets. We need to understand this. So while Daniel is praying, and he's doing it, the word says, verse 23, and at the beginning of thy supplication, the commandment came forth, and I am come. Gabriel now comes. Well, let's start from verse 21 to give it more context. Yea, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision in the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. Now, this is one of the reasons people go about saying that angels have wings. It is true that seraphims have wings, but angels? No, the Bible is dealing here with the swiftness that Gabriel came with, not that he had wings, because we have seen angels appear in Sodom and other places to Abraham, and they did not have any wings. I just thought I'd throw that out for good measure. And so while he was praying, and he informed me, verse 22, and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. At the beginning of thy supplication and commandment came forth, and I am come to shew thee, for thou art greatly beloved, therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. 70 weeks of years are determined upon thy people. Perhaps your scripture just says 70 weeks. This word of Yah says 70 weeks of years are determined upon thy people and upon the whole city to restrain transgression and to make an end of sin offering and to make atonement for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to complete the prophetic vision and to anoint the most holy place. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem until the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again and shall even in troublesome time. Notice here how Yahweh sets the agenda by way of Shemitah years. The first portion of the vision, he said, 7 times 7 weeks of years. That's 49. And And the scholars have done their work, and we know that the starting point of all this was in 457 BC. And we don't have to go there, but we can read this in Ezra chapter 6 and Ezra chapter 7. Because it's all part of the 2300 day prophecy that is referenced in Daniel 8 and verse 14. But we're not going to do that study this morning. We're just giving you an overview of things. So it says 70 weeks are determined for thy people. And as you read on, it says, but the Messiah will be cut off in the 69th week. Are you with me? He's going to be cut off, but not for himself. Now, I need to just say something on this, because I think there is a great misunderstanding, because some have taught that the Messiah was cut off in the midst of the 70th week. And then from that time until the stoning of Stephen, another 3.5 years, the whole 70 weeks has been completed. So the question to you who believe that is, as the Jewish people put away sin, have they obtained everlasting righteousness? And the answer to those questions, no. So let me posit to you another thought that perhaps you have not considered. Messiah is the one who is going to fulfill all things, because he said, all the prophecies will be fulfilled by me. And we read that throughout the scripture, even in Colossians 2. He is the head, and he casts a shadow on the assembly down here. He was cut off in the 69th week, which means there's 1 week left. 70th week. Are you with me? And in that 70th week, we'll start the what? The tribulation, which will run for 3.5 years. And I'm saying to you today, we need to keep our eyes from this September very, very closely to see what transpires in the world. If you see the economy crashes, because we notice over the last few months that the dollar is gaining strength. And like Atlas, it's lifting up all the other currency in the world. I mean, even the euro and the pound, they are begging for mercy with the dollar. Are you with me? But we look at these things and we say that's economics. That's politics. Daniel wants you to know that all of the prophecies, they play out in politics and economics. Are you with me? And so let's read on. Verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, and the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, and the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublesome time. You know the story, so I don't have to labor the point, because you know that even in the time of Nehemiah, the wall was still not built, and it was Nehemiah who organized that. And so the people who were in Babylon, hear me, they came back in 3 different groups: Zerubbabel, Ezra, and Nehemiah. And next week, hopefully, by Yah's grace, we want to look at those who did not come back, who remained in Babylon and was now under the ruler of the Persian Empire. We're going to look at that next week. That's a corollary to this. So Daniel is told that 70 weeks are determined, but Messiah is cut off. When Messiah cut off, then the thing can't roll anymore. We have to wait. for the last week, the last 7 years. Because remember, they're weeks of years. And that is going to be the final year of Earth's history. And I'm saying between now and 2029, that's going to be 7 years. And a lot of things are planned. And I'm saying if the tribulation doesn't start this year, this Shemitah year, I'm not talking about Rome's year in January, it will have to start in 2029. It's serious. So let's go to the book of Zekaryah that was read by our dear sister. The book of Zekaryah. Because these are serious times. And Zechariah is an end-time prophet, is he not? And he wants you to know, despite the shouting of some of the preachers who are ready to go off to heaven, Zechariah said in chapter 14, "Behold, the day of Yahweh cometh, and the spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee." Let's hold it there. Whenever you hear of the day of Yah, don't think of it in terms of a 24-hour day, because you will recall what I said earlier. A day, a celestial day, is 1,000 years. So the day of the Yah is 1,000 years, meaning it's the millennium. That's the day of Yah. All right? So Zechariah wants you to know that. He said, "For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem." Right? To what? To battle. Because everybody wants Jerusalem. Huh? Yeah? And Yah said, "I'm going to make Jerusalem a burdensome stone unto them. And the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth unto captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city." The residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Shall I say that another way? And the remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall Yahweh go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall what? Stand on that day upon the Mount of Olives. That's where his throne's going to be, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof towards the east and towards the west. Now, understand it. We read earlier in First Thessalonians chapter 4, 16 and 17, that when the last trumpet sounds, Yeshua appears with a shout, and with the shout of the archangel. Now, the Western mind says, when we meet him in the air, we go off to heaven and we spend 1,000 years there, and then we come back on the earth and we reign. It's not biblical. Zechariah is telling you what happened when he comes. Because remember, this is not just a day of 24 hours. It's a day of 1,000 years. So it's an event, but in the event, the process unfolds. We need to understand that. It's an eventful process then. That's what his coming is. And Daniel understands this. And Zechariah is letting you know what is going to happen. And his feet shall what? Stand on this day upon the Mount of Olives. That's where he's seated. His feet is, and there is battle, and all manner of things are going to happen. But what I want you to get out of this passage more than anything else is the time of year, the season, the appointed time that this happens. It is happening in the season of Tabernacle, which is the month that we're coming into now, September, October. Come with me to verse 16. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King Yahweh and host and keep the Feast of Tabernacle. Now, I just don't get it. People tell me, and I've heard it said numerous times, that the feast days are done away with. All right? Now, Yeshua died on Passover. We know that, don't we? And he rose on first, what? Fruit. Yes? And Feast of Pentecost was 50 days after he rose. So basically, we also know what happened at unleavened bread. So let's assume, for your argument's sake, that the 4 feasts were fulfilled. The first group, the early feast, the Passover feast, and Pentecost, all of them were fulfilled. 4. Remember, in Leviticus chapter 23, there are 7 feasts. So let me ask you, am I to assume that Yeshua had forgotten to keep the fall feast, which is Feast of Trumpet, Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacle? Are you saying he had forgotten those? He's just abandoned those, and his word will come back to him void? No, he says, I'm coming back. When? On the Feast of Trumpet, when the last trump sound, and I'm going to raise up my throne, and I'm going to judge the wicked. We call it the white throne judgment. And after everything is finished, then we, the saints with him, who will sit down with Isaac and Jacob and who else? And Abraham at the feast. And you better read Micah, because Micah wants you to know at that time he's going to raise up 7 shepherds. And he only mentioned 3, Abraham, Ishak, and Jacob. But the others, you know who they are? Moses, Aaron, Joseph, and who? David. What do they all have in common? They were all shepherds. And he said, I'm going to raise them. So just think, at the Feast of Tabernacle, we sit around a sumptuous table with all these men. That's what the word wants you to know. We're looking at the return of the king, and Daniel says that we must be careful. And Yeshua is letting us know, with Zekaryah, is letting us know we got to keep the Feast of Tabernacle. And let's read verse 17. And it shall be that whosoever will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, even unto them shall be no rain. There'll be a plague on you. Why do you think we have to rehearse these things? So that when it happens, we are prepared. Now, verse 18, and if the family of Egypt, who is Egypt? Misraim. Who is Misraim? The son of Ham. We. He said, if you don't come up, what will happen? If Egypt doesn't come up, that have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacle. How many times is it mentioned here we got to keep the Feast of Tabernacle? Several times, right? And so don't dismiss this foolishly and listen to foolish people telling you that it's done away with. Huh? And so you better understand what Yahweh is saying. Come with me to Isaiah 66. And we will read verse 23, because we're now dealing, Isaiah here is talking about the end time, talking about the millennium, right? Let's start from verse 22. For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith Yahweh, so shall your seed and your name remain. Verse 23. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon, from one Kodesh, Rosh Kodesh, to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall how many flesh? All flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahweh. Yahweh is saying, even in the new kingdom, even in the millennium, we are still going to recognize the new moon and the Sabbath. They are not done away with, regardless of what your bishop has told you. Let's read verse 24. And they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me, for their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be an abhorring unto flesh. Those of us who worship, you say, go and look. And he's warning us. Yah always warns before he brings judgment. He's letting you know, he says, these people, they did not worship me. They did not keep my commandment. And as a consequence, right now, their worms will not die. So look on them, those of you who say, my commandments are done away with. No. Not done away with at all. And so we can look and speak to the chronologists based on careful study of Yah's word, and history will confirm that the year 6000 will be reached in this generation, our generation. The judgment and the return of Messiah may well happen at the end of the next Shemitah in 2029. I'm not setting dates, but I'm showing you what the chronologist has said. When we study from Adam till now, that's why Satan is angry, because he knows that he has but a short time. And you can't even see that. You don't want to see that. And when people tell you, you get angry. Come on, assembly. Come on, yes, people. And let's close on Daniel chapter 12. Let's close on that, because it's important that we understand how much Yah wants to save us. Daniel chapter 12. And the word says that, and at that time, what time? The very time that I just spoke about. At that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, Daniel's people, and they shall be a time of trouble. This is the start of when? The Shemitah year. It could well be this year. That's what I want you to know. It's in the word. Let's start again. So, and let me read it slowly so you don't miss it. And at that time, at the Shemitah year, at the what? Time when this shall be fulfilled, shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time, and at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. That's the Lamb's book of life. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. This takes us back to First Thessalonians 4, 16 and 17. And they that be instructors shall you didn't hear me. Those that instructs the people about what is to come and what is happening. Listen to what Yah has to say. And they that be instructed shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. But though, O Daniel, shut up the book and go your way, because all that I'm telling you is for the people of the end time. It's for us. This generation, it wasn't for Daniel. Daniel got the message and sent it to us. It is our duty to read it and to understand it. And thus I say, in Yeshua's name, I have presented it to you. May we receive it and respond to Yah accordingly. In Yeshua's name, amen.